You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. It was a Tuesday morning when the world felt like it was on fire. Headlines blared from every screen. Market crashes, layoffs, global conflict. Climate crisis intensifies. Political chaos. On social media, people screamed at each other in all caps. Fear disguised itself as certainty. Outrage competed with despair for attention. You could feel it. Not just see it, but feel it. The collective anxiety hanging in the air like static before a storm. Meanwhile, you had your own fires to put out. Your phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from your boss, a deadline you forgot. That unsettling medical checkup from last week, still lingering in your head. An argument with someone you love. You look around and realize you're in the middle of your own battlefield. And worst of all, you don't feel in control of any of it. You try to breathe, but your mind is racing. You open your phone to check something real quick, and 40 minutes disappear. You try to focus, but your thoughts scatter like birds in a thunderclap. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels overwhelming. And you silently ask yourself, is this how life is now? If any of that feels familiar, you're not alone. We're living in an age where noise is constant. Distraction is default. And peace? Peace feels like a luxury we can't afford. But what if I told you this? Peace is not a luxury. It's a discipline. And calm is not a personality trait. It's a skill. One that can be trained, practiced, and embodied, even in the middle of chaos. Because here's the truth. The world has always been chaotic. Storms have always raged. But some people, through history, through war, through crisis, have walked through the fire and stayed calm. How? They learned something most of us forget. You don't have to control everything around you. You just have to learn how to control what's within you. There's a man named James Stockdale. He was a Navy pilot, shot down in Vietnam, and held as a prisoner of war for 7 years. 7 years of torture, isolation, uncertainty. When he returned home, he was asked how he survived. He said something unforgettable. I never lost faith in the end of the story. But then he added this. The optimists, they were the ones who didn't make it. They thought we'd be out by Christmas, then Easter, then Thanksgiving. And they died of a broken heart. I faced the brutal facts. But I never lost hope. That mindset of radical acceptance of what is, combined with an unshakable belief in what could be, is not just inspiring. It's practical. You see, when the outside world spirals, the only true freedom we have is in how we choose to respond. And that's what this video is about. It's not about escaping the chaos. It's about becoming the kind of person who can stand inside it and remain steady. You're going to learn how to separate what you can control from what you can't. How to pause when everything demands a reaction. How to clean up the mental noise you didn't even realize was there. How to build habits that turn calm into your default state, not your exception. And more than anything, how to train your mind to become a place you can actually live in. This isn't just self-help, it's self-defense. Because in a world addicted to urgency, stillness is a rebellion. And maybe, just maybe, you don't need to match the chaos around you. Maybe your calm can be louder than their noise. Maybe in a time when everyone is shouting, your silence can speak volumes. I'm not promising instant peace, but I am offering a path, not a quick fix, but a new foundation. Not a perfect answer, but a better question. What kind of person do I want to be when the world starts burning again? That's where we begin. Let's take a breath, and let's begin the journey toward calm, toward clarity, toward something deeper than noise. Because the storm isn't going away, but you don't have to be swept away with it. Stay with me. The next few minutes might not change the world, but they might just change how you move through it. Stoic mindset, the foundation of thinking that keeps you from being swept away. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Imagine being the most powerful man in the world and still waking up every morning unsure if you'd survive the day. That was Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, a general, a philosopher. He led armies, governed an empire, and wrote quietly to himself in a leather-bound journal, reminding his own mind how to stay calm, how to think clearly, how to resist the pull of fear and ego and chaos. He didn't write to impress anyone. He didn't know those pages would one day be published as meditations. He wrote them for one reason: to survive his own thoughts. Because even an emperor, perhaps especially an emperor, knows this truth. The hardest war is not out there, it's the one in here. He points to temple. When everything around you is burning, when decisions come with consequences measured in lives, when betrayal, disease, and death are not headlines, but everyday facts. What do you do? Marcus turned to Stoicism, and that's where we begin. The first pillar of Stoic thinking is simple, but it's also the most powerful: the dichotomy of control. You either control something, or you don't. Everything in life fits into one of these two buckets: your actions, your words, your values. That's yours. The weather, the economy, the opinions of strangers, not yours. Seneca, another Stoic, wrote, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." In other words, the event is neutral. The story you attach to it is where suffering begins. Think about your own life. How many hours have you lost spiraling over something you couldn't control? The rude comment, the algorithm, the job you didn't get, the what if that never happened. We burn our energy fighting things that are already outside the wall. But the Stoics would say, you are the gatekeeper of your own mind. So ask yourself, what part of this is truly mine to manage? And if the answer is nothing, then let it pass like weather. Now, let's go deeper. Because even when you know what's in your control, the world can still feel uncertain, unstable, and is impermanent. Which leads us to the second Stoic idea, the thought of impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. Not your pain, not your pleasure, not your success, not your suffering. Everything is passing. Everything is fading. The Stoics didn't just understand this. They meditated on it daily. Marcus would write to himself, "Soon you will be dead, and none of this will matter." It sounds grim, but it was meant to be liberating. Because if everything is temporary, then there is peace in letting go. When you truly embrace impermanence, the weight of the world gets lighter. You stop gripping so tightly to control. You stop fearing change. You stop assuming anything is guaranteed. Think of a snowflake landing on your palm. It melts almost instantly, but for a moment, it's beautiful. That's life. And when you can see life that way, you begin to appreciate what's here now. You stop trying to trap happiness in a box, and you start living in real time. But how do you actually practice that mindset? One way the Stoics did it was through a method that might sound strange: negative visualization. Every morning, they would imagine losing what they loved, losing their wealth, their freedom, even their family. Not to be cruel, but to train gratitude, to remind themselves that nothing is owed to us. Ryan Holiday, a modern Stoic and best-selling author, describes doing this before kissing his son goodnight. He imagines, for a second, that this could be the last time, not to scare himself, but to remind his heart, This moment is a gift. What happens when you do this? Suddenly, the ordinary becomes sacred. The annoying coworker becomes a human being you may never see again. The traffic jam becomes a moment to breathe. The mundane becomes miraculous. That's the power of Stoicism. It doesn't ask you to pretend everything is good. It teaches you to see things clearly and value them rightly. Still, knowing isn't enough. So the Stoics practiced something called voluntary discomfort. They would fast when they didn't need to, sleep on hard beds, walk barefoot in the cold, not to punish themselves, but to train their resilience, to remind their minds, I can handle more than I think. In today's world, this could mean taking cold showers, turning off your phone for a day, sitting in silence for an hour, walking without headphones. Why? Because the more comfortable we get with discomfort, the less power chaos has over us. You stop needing perfect conditions to feel okay. You start building confidence that comes from within. And finally, the Stoics believed in the power of the daily check-in. A simple question they would ask themselves every day. What would a wise person do right now? Or, what part of this is up to me? You don't need a fancy app or a perfect morning routine. You just need a pause, a breath, a moment to return to yourself. Because that's what Stoicism really is. Returning to yourself, to your center, to the part of you that doesn't get pulled by trends or torn by panic, to the part of you that observes, accepts, and acts with intention. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but his real kingdom was his own mind. And if he could stay calm while the Roman world crumbled around him, then maybe, just maybe, we can learn to do the same. So when life throws its next wave at you, and it will, ask yourself the questions the Stoics asked. What can I control? What's truly permanent? What would I miss if I lost it tomorrow? What am I avoiding that I should lean into? And who do I want to be when the storm hits again? The answers aren't always easy, but they're worth pursuing, because while chaos is loud, clarity is quiet. And Stoicism is the practice of learning to listen to that quiet voice inside you, even when the world is screaming. Let's go deeper. Slow and mindful response. In the heart of the storm, we learn to stand still. It starts pretty small. A ping, a message, a tone. Hey, we need to talk. You read it once. Then again, you feel your stomach tighten. Your brain doesn't wait for facts. It fills in blanks. Did I do something wrong? Am I in trouble? What now? Your breath shortens. You check the message again, but it hasn't changed. You just did. Or maybe it's a social media post. Someone throws shade. Maybe not at you, but close enough to sting. You hover over the reply button. Your fingers itch. Your brain shouts, say something. Don't let this slide. The heat rises in your chest. You're not just angry. You're hijacked. Or maybe it's worse. A phone call, bad news, an email that shifts your whole day or your whole life. Plans unravel. Expectations collapse. Control gone. You're left in the middle of a mental storm, trying not to drown. In these moments, we usually do one of two things. We react, too fast, too sharp, often with regret. Or we freeze, paralyzed, unable to choose at all. But what if there's a third way? Not to run, not to lash out, but to simply pause. Pause, reflect, respond. 3 steps of simple words, but inside them lives one of the most powerful skills you can build. Emotional composure. Let's go back to that message. Hey, we need to talk. You feel the rush, but this time you don't act on it. You pause, just a few seconds. Enough to ask, what story am I telling myself right now? That pause is everything. It interrupts the spiral. It gives your prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, a fighting chance to take the wheel before your emotions hit send. Then you reflect, is this really about me? What else could this mean? Even if it is bad, how do I want to show up? And only then, you respond. Not react. Respond with intention, with clarity, with choice. But let's be honest, pausing is hard when your nervous system is lit up like a Christmas tree. That's where your breath comes in. There's a technique used by Navy SEALs in combat situations. It's called box breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4 seconds hold. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but try it right now. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Notice what happens. Your body slows down. Your mind starts to catch up. You create a gap between stimulus and response, and in that gap, freedom lives. Now add this, the grounding 5-4-3-2-1 technique. It's used in therapy to pull people out of panic and back into the present. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. Why does it work? Because anxiety lives in the future, regret lives in the past, but peace lives in the present. Grounding forces your senses to anchor you to what's real, not what's imagined. Picture yourself in the middle of a rough day. Everything's swirling. You stop. You breathe like a box. You list what's real around you. And slowly, your mind returns to now. Still, even with these tools, thoughts can echo. Loops can stay stuck. That's where writing comes in. Not fancy journaling, not aesthetic spreads, just getting the noise out of your head and onto the page. No rules, no grammar checks, just this question: what am I really thinking and feeling right now? When you journal honestly, something shifts. The chaos that felt like a storm becomes sentence. Sentences become insights, and insights become choice. Ryan Holiday calls journaling the act of slowing down the mind. Marcus Aurelius did it every morning in his tent before battle. You don't need a battle. You just need a pen. Pause. Reflect. Respond. Breathe. Ground. Write. These aren't just practices. They're anchors. They don't stop the storm. They teach you how to stand in it without being swept away. Because the world won't stop throwing things at you. There will always be more pings, more posts, more problems. But what you build within yourself, that's yours. That's the eye of the storm. And the more you train it, the more you start to notice something remarkable. While everyone else is shouting, spiraling, rushing, you're still. You're calm. Not because life is easy, but because you've learned how to slow yourself down before the world speeds you up. That's real strength. That's clarity. That's power. So next time the message comes, or the heat rises, or your mind tries to sprint ahead, pause, reflect, respond, take a breath, look around, pick up a pen, and remind yourself, I don't need to be a reaction. I can be a response. The storm may rage, but you've learned how to stay still. Stillness is a form of power. There was a moment last year that changed something in me. I was sitting at my desk, 3 tabs open on the browser, Slack notifications piling up, Spotify playing low in the background, and my phone buzzing every other minute. I wasn't doing anything wrong. In fact, it looked like I was being productive. Multitasking, plugged in, available, alert. But inside I felt scattered, thin, like I was present everywhere, but truly nowhere. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and noticed something strange. I had forgotten what silence felt like. Not just quiet, silence. That deep, undisturbed stillness where your mind doesn't feel like a crowded room. I couldn't remember the last time I had it. And I realized I wasn't just tired. I was noisy. Not around me, but inside me. That's when it hit me. We clean our rooms. We organize our desktops. We delete files. But when was the last time we decluttered our inner world? Today, we live with more input than at any point in human history. Every day we scroll through enough words to fill a novel. We jump between conversations, devices, thoughts. We absorb without filtering. And then we wonder why we feel anxious, distracted, overwhelmed, like our minds are buffering all the time. It's not that we're weak. It's that our mental bandwidth is overloaded. Think about this. You wake up and check your phone. Within 10 minutes, you've seen a war, a meme, a product ad, someone's wedding, someone else's rant, a notification from your bank, and a message from work. Your nervous system wasn't designed for that. You don't get time to process, to feel, to think. And without realizing it, your attention becomes fragmented. You're there, but not really. You're thinking, but not clearly. You're consuming, but not digesting. This is the hidden cost of digital overload. But it goes deeper. Because when your mind is cluttered, your emotions don't land right. You can't tell what you actually feel. You can't hear your own thoughts. You lose the subtle signals, intuition, values, clarity. Noise isn't neutral. It steals from you quietly. Not your time, but your presence. And here's the dangerous myth we've been sold. Multitasking is efficient. It's not. Study after study shows that multitasking reduces performance, increases errors, and exhausts your brain. Because every switch between tasks comes with a cognitive cost. A moment of congestion, delay, and strain. Think of your mind like a computer. Too many tabs open? Things start to lag. Eventually, it crashes. Now imagine what happens when that's not just your browser, but your life. But here's the hopeful part. You don't have to escape the modern world. You just need to be more intentional with your inputs. That starts with creating spaces of quiet, on purpose. Let me offer a few simple steps. None of them are dramatic. All of them are powerful. Step 1. No input time. Set aside 20-30 minutes a day where you don't consume anything. No phone, no music, no talking, just species. It can feel awkward at first, boring even. But soon your mind starts to breathe. Your thoughts settle. You begin to hear yourself again. Step 2. One screen at a time. If you're watching something, watch. If you're eating, eat. If you're walking, walk. We've normalized layering inputs. But what if you just did one thing, fully? You'd be shocked at how much calmer your nervous system feels. Step 3. Digital detox windows. This doesn't mean throwing your phone into the ocean. It means building intentional gaps. No screens the first hour after waking. No screens the last hour before sleep. Replace that time with silence, journaling, stretching, or just being. It's not about discipline. It's about designing space for clarity to return. Step 4. Unfollow to unclutter. You don't need to see every opinion, every update, every trend. Curate your digital diet the way you would with food. Ask, does this nourish me or drain me? What you consume, you betray. And finally, step 5. Schedule silence. That might sound weird, but if you don't make time for silence, The world will fill every second for you. Treat it like a meeting with yourself, a non-negotiable. Even 10 minutes of deep quiet can reset your mental state. You see, peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you make room for. And that starts with learning to say no, not just to things, but to advice. Because in a culture obsessed with more, clarity comes from less. Less input, less noise, less jumping between things, and more presence, more focuses, more awareness of what actually matters. We talk about minimalism in lifestyle, but there's also a mental minimalism, a way of thinking that values space, simplicity, and depth over speed and stimulation. You don't need to live like a monk, but maybe you do need to reclaim a few quiet corners of your mind, to make room for the parts of you that are soft-spoken, the parts of you that don't shout, the parts that only speak when everything else goes still, because that's where peace lives. Not at the end of a task list, not in a productivity app, but in the quiet, the clean, the clear. So pause, take a breath, look around, ask yourself, what can I remove today to hear myself better? And then do it, not just once, but again, and again, and again, until silence becomes not a stranger, but a home you return to whenever the world gets too loud. Routine and core habits. No preparation, no inner calm. It starts with light. Before the phone, before the rush, before the noise, there is light. Soft, golden, quiet. It spills gently through the window and lands on your floor like an invitation. This is where the day begins. Not with urgency, not with panic, but with presence. Imagine waking up without grabbing your phone. Not because you are trying to be perfect, but because you are protecting something fragile. Your clarity, your intention, your peace. The world will find you soon enough. But for now, you get to be here. You sit by the edge of the bed. You feel the weight of your own body, the warmth of the blanket, the air touching your skin. You take a breath, and then another. No multitasking, no to-do list yet. Just you, remembering what it feels like to wake up alive. This is the art of the slow morning. Not less easy, not indulgent, just slow enough for you to catch up with yourself. Because how you enter the day shapes how the day enters you. Think about it. Most of us start in chaos. We're bombarded with notifications before we've had water. We're reading emails before we've even felt our breath. We're reacting before we've chosen how we want to live. And then we wonder why we feel behind, why we feel scattered, why we feel like the day is dragging us, not the other way around. But the truth is, calm isn't found later. It's built early. The morning is not a race, it's a ritual. One that doesn't require 2 hours or a mountaintop. It can be as simple as 5 intentional minutes. 5 minutes to breathe, to stretch, to sip something warm, to write down what's circling in your head, to ask yourself one small question. What kind of person do I want to be today? Because preparation doesn't always look like planning. Sometimes it looks like slowing down long enough to hear your own voice. We often confuse productive with rushed. We assume more movement means more value. But what if your power comes not from how fast you move, but how present you are? Imagine 2 people working side by side. One jumps between tasks, answers every ping, checks their phone every 5 minutes. They're always on, always moving, always busy. The other moves slower. They take breaks. They breathe. They say no more often than yes. But when they work, they're fully there. Guess who finishes the day with more clarity, more energy, more peace? It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters with a mind that's ready to do it. And that starts before the first task even begins. That's why a morning routine isn't about perfection. It's about anchoring yourself before the tide of the day rolls in. For me, it looks like this. I wake up. I don't touch my phone. I drink water, slowly. I open the window. Let the light in. I stretch. Not as exercise, but as a way to say, I'm here. I'm awake. Then I sit with a notebook. I write whatever comes. No filter. No pressure. Sometimes it's one sentence. Sometimes it's a page. Sometimes it's just a breath. But every time, I leave that space with a little more me. You don't need my routine. You need your own. Maybe it's walking around the block. Maybe it's praying, or making tea, or feeding your plants. Whatever brings you back to your center. And if you miss a day, that's fine. This isn't a rule book. It's a relationship with yourself, one built gently, one day at a time. Because here's the thing. If you start your day in chaos, your brain will chase chaos. If you start your day in stillness, your brain will crave stillness. And over time, your nervous system begins to learn. Oh, we don't rush into battle anymore. We move with intention. That shift? It's subtle, but it's everything. You become less reactive, less spun by urgency, less addicted to noise. You stop waking up in survival mode and start waking up in choice. Not every day will be perfect. Some mornings will be messy. Life happens. That's okay. But if you can carve even a small island of slowness in your morning, a breath, a sip, a step, you begin to train your mind. You are not just a responder. You are a creator. And this day belongs to you. So tomorrow morning, before the world knocks, before the demand pile up, before the screens light up, pause. Light a candle. Sit in silence. Put your feet on the ground and whisper to yourself, I get to begin again. And from that place, gentle, grounded yours, walk slowly into your day. Not to keep up, but to lead. Not to react, but to shape. Because calm isn't waiting for you at the end of the day. It's waiting in the very first moment, if you make room for it. The journey of transformation. One who braves the storm and returns wiser. It was 2:47 a.m. when David woke up in the dark, drenched in sweat. Not from heat, from fear. He stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, eyes wide, breathing shallow. He didn't know what had pulled him from sleep, only that something inside him felt like it was collapsing. On paper, everything looked fine. He had a six-figure job in tech, a downtown apartment with a view, a relationship that looked good in pictures. But beneath the curated surface, David was unraveling. Every day was noise, meetings, emails, expectations. 1,000 tiny urgencies dragging him across invisible lines. He couldn't remember the last time he had been still. Even his thoughts sprinted. Even his rest felt like performance. At work he smiled, delivered, overachieved. At home he scrolled, numbed out, pretended. Inside he was exhausted. But worse, he was disconnected. From himself, from meaning, from any sense of solid ground. That night, lying awake, something broke. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, like a small voice whispering, "This isn't it." The next morning, he didn't go to work. He didn't text anyone. He put on shoes, grabbed a hoodie, and walked. No destination, no plan. Just his feet on the pavement and a vague ache in his chest. He ended up in a park he hadn't visited in years. The trees were tall, the air sharp, and for the first time in a long time, he sat. No music, no phone, just him and the wind and the silence. At first it was uncomfortable. His mind protested. You're wasting time. You should be doing something. This isn't productive. But he stayed. And as the minutes passed, something shifted. Not outside, inside. The noise began to settle. The static cleared just enough for him to hear something he hadn't heard in years. Himself. That walk didn't change everything, but it started something. The next day, he walked again. And the day after that, he brought a notebook, not to write anything profound, just to empty out the clutter. He wrote things like, I'm tired. I don't know what I'm doing. I miss feeling alive. There was no clarity at first, just honesty. And somehow, that was enough. Weeks passed. He didn't quit his job. He didn't move to a cabin in the woods. But he made space. He began waking up 30 minutes earlier, not to hustle, but to breathe. He deleted apps from his phone. Not all, just enough to stop the compulsive scrolling. He started saying no to meetings that didn't matter. He started saying yes to walks, books, silence. And slowly, like a fog lifting, the world began to feel different. He still had problems, still faced stress, but now he met them differently. Not with panic, with presence. When his relationship ended, he didn't run from the grief. He sat with it, wrote through it, let it hurt, but not harden him. When layoffs happened at work and he lost half his team, he didn't spiral. He paused, asked, what can I control? And focused on that. The more chaos swirled outside, the more rooted he became inside. It wasn't magic. It was practice. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. And one day, months later, a friend asked him, you seem different, quieter, stronger. What changed? David smiled, not because he had an answer, but because he didn't need one. He had stopped trying to be unshakable. He had learned how to stand still while the ground moved. And that changed everything. Today, David still walks, still writes, still wakes up early. Not out of obligation, but from a kind of reverence. He built a new life, not louder, but deeper. Not more impressive, but more aligned. He didn't escape the storm. He learned how to move within it. He learned that calm is not a finish line. It's a daily return, a compass, a key to strength. And he would tell you now, beneath the overwhelm, beneath the speed, beneath the fear, there's a version of you that already knows how to be still. Not passive, not numb, but truly present. You don't have to wait for your breaking point. You don't have to lose everything to find what matters. You just have to pause, to listen, to choose over and over again, peace instead of panic, stillness instead of noise, depth instead of distraction. Because calm is not the absence of crisis. It's the presence of you, fully here, fully awake, fully alive, even as the world spins. That is transformation. And it begins the moment you stop running. Turn inward and remember, you were never meant to outrun the storm. You were meant to become the kind of person who can walk through it and come out the other side, not untouched, but unchanged in the ways that matter. Who do you become when the storm hits? It always begins the same way. A screen lights up. A message arrives. The headlines scream louder than your own thoughts. The world rushes toward you, demanding reaction, pulling your attention in 1,000 directions. The storm hasn't stopped. It never does. It only changes shape. Sometimes it's loud, obvious, explosive. Other times it's quiet, like an endless to-do list, a steady stream of distractions, a low hum of anxiety you can't name, but it's there. And the question is still the same. Who are you in the middle of it? Maybe when this video began, you felt like the storm was winning, like your mind had become a battlefield, like calm was something other people had figured out, but you hadn't. But look where we've been together. You've seen that peace isn't a place you stumble into. It's something you build. It's not found out there. It's cultivated in here. You've met the Stoics, people who lived through real chaos, who faced war and death and betrayal, and chose clarity over panic. They taught us that we can't control the weather, but we can learn how to sail. You've learned the power of the pause, that moment between trigger and response where freedom lives, the breath that resets your nervous system, the space that makes clarity possible. You've explored how silence isn't emptiness. It's nourishment, that we are drowning in information and starving for wisdom. That stillness is not weakness. It's strength wrapped in softness. And then we talked about mornings, about not rushing into the world before returning to yourself, about how intention, even in small doses, can change the entire flavor of a day. And maybe most importantly, you witnessed a story. A man not unlike you who hit his edge, who stopped running, faced the storm, and walked through it with nothing but breath and honesty, and came out changed. Not perfect, but rooted. More himself than he had ever been, Barry. So now, here we are. The end of the road, or maybe the beginning of a different one. And I want to ask you something, not as a narrator, not as a voice on the screen, but as a human being sitting quietly beside you. Who do you want to be when everything gets loud again? Not what do you want to do, but who do you want to become? Because the storm will return. The stress, the distractions, the people who trigger you, they'll come back. But next time, you don't have to meet them as the same version of you. You can meet them as the person who knows how to breathe, who knows how to pause, who knows how to choose a response that aligns with peace, not panic. You can be the person who turns off the noise for 10 minutes because you value clarity more than clicks. The person who stretches in the morning and feels their own heartbeat before checking headlines. The person who, when the world rushes, slows down because you know what matters. That kind of person is rare and powerful and deeply needed right now, because in a world addicted to outrage, calm is contagious. In a culture chasing more, presence is radical. And when everyone is running faster, it takes courage to stop, to breathe, to say, not this time, looks like. So this is your invitation, not to change your whole life overnight, but to begin quietly, gently, intentionally. One breath, one walk, one moment of silence before the noise. Let that be enough for today. And tomorrow, begin again. Because this isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming someone you trust, even in the storm. And over time, as you show up for yourself again and again, you'll look back and realize you didn't escape the chaos. You transformed within it. And maybe, just maybe, your stillness has become stronger than their storm. If this video meant something to you, I invite you to keep walking this path. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep building this space together, where slowness is strength and clarity is a practice. Leave a comment. What's one thing you'll do differently starting today? Not for the algorithm, for you. And most of all, take what you've felt here and bring it out into the world. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people who've made peace with themselves. More people who've stood in the middle of the storm and said, this is who I am now. So, who are you in the storm? Who do you choose to be when the wind rises again? You already know the answer. It's in the breath you take next. Let it be calm. Let it be true. Let it be yours.